Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join this call this afternoon, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through the call, bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for these other pre-valued currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started this morning. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the purchase or the sale of these currencies, but we're sharing with you as rather substantial currency holders ourselves the information that we feel is relevant. Of course, the most relevant piece of information for those of you holding the dinar is the possible date for the reinstitution of their currency. For the last few months, it's been our view that January of 2020 remains the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the currency. Though there are things on the ground in Iraq today that we feel is problematic, we are still cautiously optimistic that January of 2020 still remains the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. And let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. Unfortunately, the Iranians are still doing everything they can to interfere with the nation-state of Iraq becoming fully independent, having an international currency, being able to deal with other nations and not being tied to Iran. There have been allegations that some of the protesters that have been injured and killed were the result of Iranian snipers trying to foment violence and chaos. That is yet to be proven incontrovertibly, but it makes perfect sense. The Prime Minister Mahdi and his government kind of go back and forth on what they want to do. Their latest position is that they will only step down and allow a new government to be put into place if the transition is going to be smooth and swift. The Sadrists, which of course is the largest coalition within the parliament, have abandoned, at least for the time being, a no-confidence vote for the Mahdi government, but have instead opted for a fast-track passage of the new election law. And in fact, there has been a first reading of that law in the House, and my understanding is that there will be a second reading this week. So that's moving along pretty quickly. Now, let's just sort through all of that and try to answer the question that's most on our minds. What does all of this mean with regard to the reinstitution of the dinar, and when can we expect that to occur? Well, there's still a couple of things that need to be done. First, the CDI has to irrevocably stop the currency auctions. They have to complete the project for the deletion of the zeros. When those two things are accomplished, the United States must then lift the OFAC sanctions. The OFAC sanctions, the Office of Foreign Assets Control. Once those things have occurred, the reinstitution can happen, and that can happen by January of 2020. Now, it seems to me there are three scenarios with regard to the reinstitution of the dinar. First, that the currency will never revalue. And of course, those of us that have currencies hear that all the time from individuals that frankly have not been following this for a decade. I think that's completely and totally hang on one second. Someone keeps calling in. Okay, someone keeps trying to call in on my phone, and I keep getting this thing that's blocking the phone. Just give me 1 second here. I apologize for the inconvenience. Okay, I think we're straight here. As I was saying, there are 3 possible scenarios. The first is that the Iraqi dinar never revalues. Now, I think that's absurd. The Iraqi dinar must revalue in order for Iraq to avoid being a failed state. The international community since 2003 has dumped anywhere between $3 and $4 trillion into the rebuilding of the nation state of Iraq as a free sovereign nation. Iraq per square mile could be the richest country in the world, so it's well within their means to repay this $3 to $4 trillion to the international community. Second possibility is that the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar is postponed all the way to January of 2021 because they are simply unable to get their affairs in order in time for the reinstitution in January of 2020. That's possible, but I think that's unlikely. Even though we're cautiously optimistic, we still believe that the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar is January of 2020. And even if they have to pass the 2020 budget at the 1180 rate, what they could do is allow that budget to be passed and the government simply postpone payments at the 1180 rate until they get their other issues resolved. By doing that, it would be a much easier process to amend the budget if the government made no payments at the 1180 rate, but waited until the reinstitution, which could still happen in January or certainly in the first quarter of this year. So I'm not happy about the fact that there continues to be chaos, that there continues to be some violence, that the Iranians continue to interfere. These are some very bad people in Iran, and removing Iraq from their little orb of influence is something that needs to happen. The only other outlier for Iran is that would leave China as their only real customer for their oil and the revenue that they need to generate. And at some point, I would imagine that that would be somehow linked to the trade negotiations with the United States. But that's farther down the road. So I'll just conclude by saying we are still cautiously optimistic that January of 2020, for the reasons I've stated, is the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. Now, that does not leave individuals very much time to get their affairs in order prior to this reinstitution, particularly with Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays upon us. So I would suggest that those of you that have currencies and have not gotten your affairs in order, who may not understand what that involves, would listen very carefully to what I'm about to say here. Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Phase 2 is post-RV and involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Now let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. There are a number of entities that one can establish to provide asset protection. For example, individuals can establish LLCs and sub-S corporations. They do provide some asset protection, but they basically separate business assets from personal assets. The problem here is that these currencies are a personal asset. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations that are owned in the majority by either one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. Now, this makes the LLC and the sub-S corporation inappropriate for our needs. Some individuals have established something called a revocable or a living trust. Now, such a trust does exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and in some cases can substantially reduce exposure to the federal estate tax. But revocable or living trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they would be inappropriate for our needs. Some individuals have established a single irrevocable trust, and they do provide privacy and asset protection for business and personal assets. But there is an inherent flaw or weakness in a single trust, and it's this. If any asset within that trust is involved in civil litigation, that could necessarily drag all of your other assets and your net worth into that litigation because they're all owned by that same single entity, that one trust. The only bulletproof asset protection that one can establish to protect themselves both pre and post RV is to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and I'm going to discuss that in a little bit more detail here, and most importantly, why that package must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. First, by establishing this package, you will protect your privacy and your anonymity because assets held within this trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit is going to be time-consuming. It's going to be extremely frustrating because it's going to come at the precise time that this revaluation has occurred and there's other things that you want to do. And in addition, the cost of a 6-year IRS audit is probably higher than the price of this asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your asset protection trust package is in force and your pre-RV currencies have been assigned to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust package. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an audit if the taxable event of this revaluation were to occur within this trust. And second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they cannot do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because included within this package is our exclusive gift subtrust. In order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you are going to need to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the lump sum after you've negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can gift to them through this gift subtrust. Because you're gifting through this package of trusts to these individuals, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. The language of the subtrust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can give these individuals the exact dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But again, because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, the funds will be within this trust, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, the day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs in a state of $25 million. Now this estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. Scenario number 2, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that same $25 million estate, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer those currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred it to our trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a very important asset protection benefit. I like to refer to it as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy referred to as segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this critical from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal persons or separate legal entities, and the plaintiffs would have no legal standing to pursue those separate legal persons or entities. So your trust package works very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trusts prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2. All of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages. Many of our clients have already expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. We will assist you by explaining in detail how all of these trusts work, and the proper way to fund those entities is through the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. Now, we'll have our tax specialists there to assist you with tax issues. Many of you, for the first time, will be dealing with very sophisticated tax strategies. We'll also have our offshore specialists there. They will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxation on the reinvestment of the net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So you're going to want to get a substantial amount of your money out of the bank and it work in other markets. And lastly, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your wealth in tangible assets to avoid that volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and manage the sub-trusts. You will also have one optional gift sub-trust if you intend on gifting currencies to family and friends and wish to control those proceeds, which sub-trust can be converted in the future to a standard sub-trust, and then 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized for our existing clients, but it has an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Denarians, we knew that that price tag was going to be unaffordable for many. So by basically restructuring this package post-RV and simplifying it a bit, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which some would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be made within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place pre-RV for all of the reasons that we've stated here. Now, one other thing about this trust package. The only other cost to you for the life of this trust package would be the nominal paralegal fees that would be involved when you wanted to, for example, change the terms of the trust, possibly replace a trustee, fund some of the sub-trusts. As an example, let's say you called us a month after the revaluation and said, well, I'm scheduled to close on a $500,000 home that I'm purchasing on the beach, and I wish to create a sub-trust to protect that home. The paralegal fee for a sub-trust to protect a $500,000 home would be somewhere between $100 and $150, which is a nonsensically nominal sum to protect a $500,000 asset. Now, I hope the information we've provided here has been helpful, informative. I certainly hope that if the things we've discussed here today are of interest, you will contact us. I'm going to go to a Q&A in just a moment. But again, for our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this very specialized area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together now for over a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so, they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes, then there are, of course, investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of societal wealth in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is now identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. Again, thanks so much for listening to the call. We're going to go to the Q&A. If you're interested in the things that we've discussed, I think you should have a pen and paper handy. I'm going to give you our contact information. I strongly suggest you get our initial informational package. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about their evaluation. You're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever by getting this package, even though it does include everything you need should you decide to establish a pre-RV asset protection trust. In addition, after reviewing the package, you can contact us either by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you in every way, and there will be no consultation fee. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A in a moment here. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We don't take service calls for existing clients on the Q&A. We reserve this time for individuals that have questions about Trusts Unlimited and our services. And second, for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and open now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3, and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but post-RV emails will probably be going out on a weekly basis. Well, we do have a caller in the queue here. The number is area code 312. That's 312, and that's got to be Les.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Jim. How are you?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yourself?
I'm doing fine.
That's good.
A little cold in Chicago, but other than that, doing fine.
Yeah, we're pretty good here. We're pretty good shape down here, but it's going to get cold.
All right.
Well, what can I do for you today?
Question regarding what you were saying on the reading. you said they were reading, or they passed the reading on, but Iraq is doing something about the reading. I couldn't hear the call went out.
Okay. When a law is passed in Iraq, they have this format. They have a first reading, then they have a second reading and debate, then they vote on the law, and then it goes into the Gazette for 30 days. Now, my belief is that once the law passes, because of the situation, they're going to waive the 30-day rule of the Gazette and proceed with an election, which means that we still could be looking at a reval in January. Now, I know things are getting tight, but if they move quickly, I think when the Sadrists decided that the best course of action was to just go ahead and pass the new election law, they have the votes in the Parliament, the House, to move this along. And, of course, obviously there are going to be people that are dragging their feet because there are people that just don't want to see this happen for a number of reasons. Some of them are corrupt politicians, and they're concerned that after the elections, the accountability and justice law is going to come and rear its ugly head on them. Some of them are some of the more radical Shia, and they do not want to be separated from Iran for a number of reasons. Some of them are still in the position of trying to abscond and get some of the provisional currency out of the country so they can try to negotiate an exchange. Even though they're an Iraqi national, they want to take advantage of the 3 zeros outside of the country. So, unfortunately, look what's going on in this country. We're having, this impeachment inquisition today as we speak. So there are people that just don't like the status quo, and they do everything they can to obstruct, to block, and to prevent, the process from proceeding. So that's where we are. But I still, as I've said, I'm still cautiously optimistic that we have a shot in January. And once again, what they can do, I'm not saying that they will, but as long as the government doesn't make expenditures at the 1180 rate, it's much easier for them to amend the budget than if they go to the 1180 rate, pass the 2020 budget, start making expenditures, and then have to rewrite the budget reflecting the new rate after the reinstitution. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, so they've had all 3 readings? Or only
no, they've had 1
readings?
reading. They're scheduled. My understanding is they're going to have the second reading this week.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks again, Jim.
Yes,
say hi to the professor.
Yep. Will do. Take care.
All right. You too.
Well, that's our only caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call. Of course, we have a call scheduled every Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and next Wednesday, we will try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency call. Failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the call, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.